weekend. We can celebrate your resurrection. We pray today for wisdom and direction as we make decisions for our county and those our constituents. We pray for direction for those who are in law enforcement, those that wear a badge, have a uniform, and we pray their safety in everything they do. So as it is prayer, we pray in Christ's name. Amen. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have the minutes from April 4th, 2022. If everyone has a chance to review those, I would accept the motion to accept.
Yep, motion to accept.
I'll second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
3-0. We had a payroll totaling $259,840.08 and claims totaling $925,658.76. Accept the motion.
Motion to approve the financials.
Seconded.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
3-0. Sheriff.
Good morning. Morning, Todd.
As of this morning, we have 88 inmates in jail. 38 of those are pretrial superior, 24 pretrial circuit, 8 F6, and 9 DOC. The numbers have picked up here in the last several weeks a little bit. So, again, I sound like a broken record. Most of my time is spent with the jail renovation project and getting things going there. They're getting ready to pour concrete this week in the new portion that was added on. They are definitely full-blown in our front office right now, so it's a kind of a zoo in there. They're buttoning up the first air handler that they've replaced in there. They're starting on the second one and working their way through the offices, so it's quite the mess out there, and a lot of people coming and going, so we're getting things going there. The only other thing I wanted to bring up, I know Sean had, with the county highway project, had talked about a tower for communication, about using our tower at the sheriff's office. That obviously falls under your guys' realm, but I have no problem with it. I just, maybe a little early for that, but I know he was reaching out and looking at different places as far as one, either building their own tower or renting space on a tower somewhere, and to me that's, he can use our tower out there at the sheriff's office for all I care. So that you guys know that in your project, as long as you guys don't have a problem with it, I don't have a problem with it. So.
Does it have good coverage countywide?
Yeah.
Can we say height-wise, do we have any issues?
No.
Okay.
I mean, we run repeaters off north and south, but it shouldn't be an issue. But something for you guys to consider instead of spending money on that somewhere else. So.
Okay.
You know what the height is on that tower?
What's
You know
that?
the height is on
I
that
do
tower?
not know.
Okay.
Not off the top now. ERS would be able to tell us that.
Yeah.
They're the ones that surface it. So.
Thank you for that.
Yep. And I don't have anything else.
Very good.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Sean?
Morning.
Morning.
Got everybody out plowing snow today? No.
Not funny.
No, it isn't. I'm not happy with it yet. We're good. Just what we've been doing, what we're going to be doing here in the future. We went and put stone on all the gravel roads, put out 17,000 tons. We have the maintainers out there now, grading them all out, getting them ready for summer. I got 2 pipe crews out, one north, one south, fixing all the drainage issues that we have reported and have found. I got 2 patch crews out, taking care of the chipped roads that have failed us over the winter. We are still accepting dust control applications. That will end on the 29th. You can come to the highway department and fill it out or mail it in. wellscounty.org, you can fill out your application there. I just want to remind everybody that we are on the roads now, standing in traffic, so everybody slow down when they come by. Keep us in mind, we have families to go home to. And then we have an individual that's going to go off on a medical leave, and I was looking and discussing with you guys and Steve that we need a temporary replacement for approximately 2 months. So I think we have figured out how to do that without actually hiring a county individual. And I just wanted to bring that to your attention and make that aware to the public that we'll have a temporary employee in there manning the highway department while she is taking care of business.
Very good. Thank you for letting us know.
On that stone, did we switch? We had that issue last year with the...
This was just for the gravel roads, but yes, I'm looking at going back to the 11s that were done in the past.
Okay.
You were talking for the upcoming chip seal season?
Yeah.
Yes.
Because up there on Norwell Road, you fixed Norwell Road at the top by the T. It looks great, but it had the new chip, not the old chip, and it looks good though.
Okay. And then Connor is... Oh, hey Connor. We got Connor here now, so I'll let Connor have the update for the highway garage.
Come on up.
Morning.
That scared me right here.
Yeah, it was, sorry. Late last week, we received a 50% set from the design team. I think it was on Friday, maybe after hours. I haven't opened it yet, but we'll be putting together another estimate. Based on that, we'll be going out to some of our partners to firm up the MEP numbers as well and see where we're at. We are also ready to, after we made the changes to the pre-engineered metal building, we're ready to put that back into the schedule today. So we lost a couple weeks there, but for the overall project, it's not going to be a big deal.
We have a meeting tomorrow at 9, is that correct?
That's correct.
Can you have that 50% printed so we can look at them?
Fantastic.
Okay,
Thanks.
very good.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Was there any questions, other questions?
I don't have any.
All right.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it.
Hey,
All right. Good morning.
Morning.
Can't help the snow, but it is what it is. Just a quick update on a couple items here. Federal Aid 2027, that's the County Road 200 South Phase 2 project. NDOT will be posting the consultant letters of interest, or an RFP, here soon. I had a early coordination meeting last Thursday with NDOT to kind of review that project. I got the NDOT PM identified for that. So we just reviewed the project, the scope, pre-qualifications for consultants, so we should be getting advertisements for that, and then sometime in May, I'll get those responses from consultants, and then I need to identify the selection team for that, as well as 2 other projects as far as the construction inspection services on 2 other federal aid jobs. That'd be Bridge 54 and 105. I'm going to try to do all 3 of these at one time, because it's a little bit time intensive to do the review, and you got to do it a very particular way. So I'll keep you updated as soon as I get the last ones in for this Phase 2 project. We'll kind of do all 3 at the same time. So just wanted to inform you of that. Bridge 121, this is the bridge over the 8 Mile, that's County Road 600 East. Asphalt was placed last Tuesday. Certainly was nice weather for that. Then waiting on guardrail. I think the rain last week really kind of threw us off as far as getting that scheduled, and with Good Friday, just tough to make sure we had contractors to do it. We were hoping to be even done last week. So hopefully this week we can get the guardrail in. Once the guardrail's in, then we can be really about done with that project. There's some final restoration will be done, but we'll be able to open it up to traffic then. So hopefully sometime this week I'll be able to make the announcement. As soon as we do, we'll notify dispatch and the schools, make sure that they know that they can start using the road. So we'll maybe leave some detours up for the seeding and restoration work that's going to happen, but that'd just still be for local traffic. We'll be in good shape. Murray Stormwater Project, work is progressing on that nicely. We're up away from the river now, working our way up Main Street through Murray. Majority of the storm sewer work is already on site, so all the pipes and structures are already there, so you might see those along the right-of-way or the shoulder in places. Rain last week made for one heck of a mess for us out there, so it's real muddy right now, but thankfully they're working their way up. Storm sewers are very simple. As long as we work our way from downstream to upstream, it actually gets better as we go. So hopefully we'll be well on schedule. We lost a couple days, but 10 weeks is a long time for us on it.
We'll be looking at pavement pretty closely. I'm looking at the trenches as far as what our asphalt's there. There's not a lot of existing asphalt. So.
What's the average depth?
I mean, it really was about an inch or so of a chip seal and asphalt in town. So we're doing full depth aggregate, so the areas over the pipe are gonna be in great shape. I'm just a little bit nervous about what we're gonna be dealing with trying to transition. So I'm gonna be looking closely at what do we wanna do as far as the replacement as we go back through that.
Gotcha.
So, but it's gonna have local traffic. I mean, it's held up as well as it did. Without it, so we're not building a freeway through town. I don't want to act like that, but I also want to be mindful that you're going to have two very different pavement sections through town. So I'll be in contact with VTF as far as what our solution is ultimately for that pavement. Bridge 65, asking to proceed with the engineering design services on that project. This is, again, Jeff Road over a branch of the Salamone River. We had talked about it at the last meeting with BF&S. I did receive design proposals from two other firms. Both of them were higher than the BF&S original number of 104,520. And I still think that we're going to be able to be under that as well because I haven't received the new number with the survey. So if you're willing to proceed with that, then I'll ask them to draft a contract and I'll bring it to you at your next meeting, something that we could sign.
Yeah, motion to approve that. I'm the one that held it up last time for the other bids, so.
I'll second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
3-0.
Excellent, thank you. Previous County Home Road and County Road 300 South intersection. I've been talking about this for probably 2 years now, at least. Previously, I've been working with Engineering Resources to develop a scope of work for the project. We've looked at this a couple different ways. Our initial fear was that we'd have to try to acquire ground in that woods, and then it could be a wooded wetland, and what would that do to the cost of the project and permitting as well. Based on some initial discussions with Derek Frederickson from Engineering Resources, we believe we can do our work outside of that wooded area. There's still going to be some right-of-way acquisition that would be required, but it's going to be fairly minimal. So we feel that this would fall under a community crossings project rather than trying to go for a full federal aid. So I'm looking to pursue a contract with Engineering Resources on this. There is some vertical curve issues of County Home Road north of the intersection. There's a couple hills that affect the sight distance and the trees very close to the road as well. So I've got alternate on this project to include some additional work from 250 south all the way into the intersection of 300 south. And I was just curious if you were interested in pursuing a design contract at this time. I do have a proposal from Engineering Resources for that.
Can we meet out there at the site and see the start and stop and left and right, so we can kind of get an idea of where we're going to begin? And
Absolutely.
because I know you said 2 years, it's been at least 4 years.
Oh, yeah,
So-
all right. Well, I know I had a proposal from them probably from,
Right.
well, it might even have been 2019.
Because we even talked about the bridge east of it yet.
Yep,
on
that
top of
was
this.
one, and so I've had to pull that one out of this because of the cost of the two, and as far as the bridge
Exactly.
timing doesn't line up with this. But it's certainly something that we want to try to, I want to get this moving. It's been kind of stalled out for quite a while, but
I would like to meet out in the next 2 weeks out there,
absolutely, I can do that.
if you would, and then we can address it first meeting in May, if
All
that's
right.
okay with you guys.
That's fine, I can bring that up at that time then.
I'd like to see that
You
also.
guys want to see and meet
Yeah,
with
I'd
them
like to see
too?
that.
That way we know.
Yep, we can just kind of go through what the concept is. I know this is kind of new to at least two of you hadn't had a chance to look at this or talk about this much, so
Yep.
I can do that.
Thank you.
Bridge 403, this is County Road 800 South. Utility relocations will be happening this week, both Heartland and Heartland RMC and Citizens Telephone. Citizens Telephone's working on their fiber line. I think it was discussed during the drainage board. They need to move that because their fiber line's too close to the pilings and the wing wall. So they're going to be relocating that. And the overhead electric, Heartland RMC had initially said that they wanted to redo the poles along that entire mile. They're actually looking at doing that in their budget for 2022. That's what they told me back in August. Based on scheduling, they're going to just de-energize their line while they're driving the pilings because they're just not ready to do that work. So they can backfeed that system. So there's a possibility that we'll be working on that bridge even in the next 2 weeks.
as soon as I get a firm start date from the contractor, I'll send a notice out to the media and to our dispatch so that they know to try to avoid that area. It's fairly low traveled in that area, but certainly if you need to respond or get out there, that needs to be done. So I'll let them know once we have that. Just a little update on Bridge 402. I know we discussed this with USI at the last meeting. They're looking at trying to do all the work within the county legal drainage easement rather than try to require right-of-way. So the staging and dirt work would be kind of temporary features. Because that's a Huntington County surveyor's jurisdiction, their drainage board, USI will be contacting Huntington to try to discuss getting that permission. So. And then with that, we'll move up to the local road safety plan. I have Jerry Faust and Dan Avery, both from NERC, here to kind of present some of the items for the county. And then, of course, this locked up. Well, I need your assistance with that. And just to kind of fill the gap here, the local road safety plan, we had reached out to Jerry Faust and Dan to assist us in putting together a plan that looks at the types of crashes that we have in Wells County, mitigation measures that we can look at. It certainly will be an assistance to the highway department and myself on future grant applications and projects to prioritize the work that we're doing. Certainly, it's always a question of the public, why are we doing what we're doing? This certainly is looking at the actual impacts to the citizens. Everyone says there was a crash here, or a crash there. Well, this looks at the actual crash data and puts together the document that helps guide us in what we're asking to do and why we're asking to do it. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jerry.
So the local road safety plan has been an initiative throughout the state by a lot of different local public agencies. Some counties have completed those. We're in the process of completing those in the Northeast area in our jurisdiction. This is the actual first one that we've completed. The process, though, is really very simple, and we wanted to keep this document as simple as possible because of the complexity of crash data. Essentially, what we're doing is we're looking at all the crash types within your area, which is what this document does. And we summarize those in two ways. One, we looked at the entire system, which you'll see throughout the tables.
If you can zoom into that a little more, just so that that's width.
This way?
Yeah, you want to do page width if you can.
Okay.
A little more if you can.
All right. So this map shows the planning area that you see here. Essentially what we're focusing on are the areas that are under the county highways jurisdiction. What are, the roadways and the intersections that they're responsible for. So we look at the entirety. In Table 1 you can see a crash summary of all the crashes that occurred in that 5-year period. And highlighted is the #1 crash type throughout the county was 661 of ran-off road crash types. When we look at intersections, NDOT's information, we find most of those are rear ends, which are probably occurring at intersections or at least an access point where a vehicle is slowing. When we look at just the county roads, again, excluding all of the NDOT facilities, ran-off road collisions are the #1 crash type. This is just overall. Table 2 is specific, which is what really the intent of the local road safety plans initiative is. It's targeting where are people being severely injured or killed in crashes.
Can you put that table up so these guys can see it?
Okay. Bear with me. I'm learning. Oops. Yeah, so here's this table. So the highlighted ones, this is where we just looked at all the data, summarized those. You can see that there are 17% of the overall crashes were deer. But the number one crash type by percentage and overall just all of the crashes itself, Randolph Road appeared to be the number one issue in the county. But then what we really wanted to focus on was this, which is where people are being injured or killed. And when we look at that same set of data, Randolph Road accounts for all three, whether it was an NDOT or a local road facility. By far, that was the most critical. You'll look down below, 75 at right angles. So those are the intersection crashes typically where you see someone disregarding or pulling out in front of a vehicle that was resulting in injury. And so we took all of this data then and we broke it down for the causation of why people run off the road. And we typically would refer that to a lane departure. So running off the road can be for a variety of reasons. And so included in this analysis, we would include the typical officer assigns as a ran-off-road collision, a head-on collision where they left their lane of travel, opposite direction sideswipe, and non-collisions. Which sounds funny that we're saying it was a collision, but it was a non-collision. Typically, that's just where a motorcycle rolls over, lays down the motorcycle and slides. They didn't actually collide with anything other than the ground. So, and these are difficult to see. Do you know if I'm going to be able to?
Yeah, we can try to zoom in a little more. And this, and just for everybody's information, this document is actually on the county's website. So this
Right.
PDF has been available here for the last at least 2 weeks, maybe more. So certainly would encourage anybody that's interested to certainly get a copy of this document.
When we followed the roadway departure crashes, some of those did occur within the operational limits of an intersection. So if you have a vehicle that was turning at a high rate of speed from northbound to westbound, they could run off the road. As you know, they just went too wide. So some of those are in here, but typically they're not happening in intersections, obviously. And so we follow that. Whether they were on curves or not curves, the majority of them are not on curves, and they happen under dry conditions and daylight, which is split. Half were dark, half were daylight. And when the red is indicating ones that were an injury or fatality, where the black is just property damage only. The more detailed one, which is just for the county roadways, excluding all NDOT, these are the number that we saw up there at the beginning. And it follows the exact same trend where it's not at intersections, non-curves, dry, and here we have a little bit higher percentage, but relatively an even split at day versus dark. So this was how we come to find what's the primary causation of crash type in the county and what's the primary cause of serious injuries and fatalities. So now we know what the type is. The next step was determining where. And I always caution on this side, and Nate and I've had many conversations about this, because serious injury crashes is kind of like chasing your tail. The next one happens somewhere else. As soon as you address this one, the next one happens over here. So what we're really looking at is a systemic type approach to identify what are the common characteristics on all of these roadways that are leading to people leaving their lane of travel. This is where the 5-year summary shows those collisions occurring. You can see on here the roadways or the locations of those, and then below this I did provide a small summary of ones that had a number of crashes on them. So you can see the roadways that are most common for those. This was not intended to say this is the first road you should work on, the second road. The intent was to really look at what do those roads look like and how typical are they of your other county roadways. And so that's really what we're getting at, is what do we do to address those to mitigate future serious injury or fatal crashes in the area.
You're essentially, what you're doing is you're creating a profile of what as if you're a criminologist looking for a profile of what are indicating factors to cause accidents elsewhere, so that we're not just trying to chase a past fatality. You're trying to, as we're doing improvements to roads based on structural needs, we don't have enough money to do all of these and sort of condition ratings. If we're going to do, for example, a bridge project, we're going to try to make sure that we don't propagate the issues that we see elsewhere. So when we're doing a project, you'll see a widening. Often we'll get asked, well, has anybody ever died here? Why are we doing anything? Well, we don't want to wait for a fatality if fatalities elsewhere have been caused by similar conditions. And so we're trying to apply the conditions across the county to look at what are the minimum design standards that we want to see develop out of this, and what can we do to make things better within the county. So this is essentially a report card on the safety of our roads, looking at these improvements and what can we do. And certainly I'm going to use this as a tool when going to the state or federal highway to seek funding for projects of a certain type. Even if there's not been a fatality in an area, we're looking at what causes fatalities on roads and trying to make sure that we improve our roads network and safety system. So, yeah.
And so with that, exactly what he's saying is, the end result of this is to develop somewhat of an action plan. What steps are you going to take to mitigate this? And it's not looked upon as favorably at a state or federal level to do spot treatments. Spot treatments, you're going to spend a lot of money to fix one location that might reduce one crash. If you spent that same amount of money over your whole system, you might reduce 10 crashes. So how do we look at those type of improvements? We come up with some action steps that are primarily based upon proven countermeasures that Federal Highway has approved, some of the specific road improvements. But these are the action steps. Did you want to go through these? Or?
Yeah, I can go through these. I mean, this isn't too exhaustive. And they're essentially your best management practices that we're trying to identify so we can stay consistent. County to hold an annual meeting of stakeholders and the local road safety plan edits. This is kind of the living document. We're going to continue to look at the data. Now that the system's set up, we can take different crash data that has developed over the years and input that in and see what improvements are made, or if there are other hot spots that are generated based on changes in traffic pattern. We'll be looking to adopt a county highway standards for construction consistent with the recommendations and of those of stakeholders. County to adopt right-of-way limits for local roads, rural minor collectors, major collectors, and arterial roads. So we'll be looking at minimum road right-of-way widths as a result of this. Investigate with NERC crash data to look at demographic distinctions and look for educational efforts in the future. So look at if there's specific areas that we can try to target. Let's say there's an area around a school, maybe we work with driver's education courses as far as what might be areas of interest, if there's something with age associated with it. Better equip law enforcement agencies for this, so we're looking to try to make improvements there, make sure that they know what to look for. If speed is a factor in crashes or consistently, they might be able to adjust enforcement areas. Pursue road right-of-way acquisition via donations or acquisitions across the county consistent with these standards. Highway Department and contractors remove permanent obstructions within the right-of-way, so where you've got large concrete abutments or property owners wishing to put maybe a large brick mailbox in the public right-of-way. Those are all obstructions when you're talking about lane departures. We want to try to take things that can cause a fatality out of that area. That's a clear zone for a reason. County to install pavement markings on roadways to meet MUTCD standards. You see striping and edge lines. That's something that the county can do as a measure. Provide recoverable edge pavement or treatment on identified roadways. So that'd be that little sinusoidal millings that you see at areas. That's something that the county could do where necessary. Ensure curbs are properly marked, meeting MUTCD standards. County would install center line and edge line rumble strips on applicable roadways. Really, the county doesn't have a lot of roadways that would meet standards for that, the needs based on traffic counts, but that's something that can be looked at. Also, the county could ensure roadway widths and pavement sections are consistent with maintaining the desired speeds, so speed can be a factor in these. And county best equip law enforcement agencies for patrol and enforcement activities. So I think there's a duplicate in that one here.
Did you guys look at traffic patterns though? Because you look at some of these, it's 450 East, Norwell Road, 100 West. These are all alternatives to get out of the log jam on 100, or on State Road 1.
You're pointing out something that's not lost on me. And so part of what we're looking at, we don't wanna go through this with the ends in mind directly, but that's certainly something that once this document's been reviewed, we're gonna start looking at different traffic patterns, looking at where diversional traffic is happening. Certainly, it's higher density. Something that we've talked about fairly openly is that if there were improvements to State Road 1, a number of your commuters would stay on State Road 1 versus the alternative traffic patterns. And so you got over 700 miles of county roads. If you can get a percentage of these drivers to stay on wider lanes, higher speeds, wider clear zone, then the county wouldn't be in a position where we need to widen every other north-south route that people are bypassing. This is, if we, depending on which track is taken, the county could be looking at widening a lot of different roads, and you've named a number of them. Norwell Road, 100 East, 250 East, 600 East, Tacoma Road. A lot of these paths are alternatives that drivers are taking that if State Road 1 were to be widened, that some of this may disappear. You don't know. And I can't say definitively what those impacts are.
A key also to keep in mind with this local road safety plan is we're looking at frequency of crashes. We are not looking at rate. So we are not in any way saying that any of these specific roadways are more hazardous than another. Because typically you're always going to see more crashes on roadways that have a higher volume. There's a direct correlation. The more the volume, the more the crashes. It's just, that's the way it works. What we would typically be looking for is a rate based if we were going to actually say, does this roadway have an issue or not? That is not what we're trying to say. What we're trying to find is where the commonality is in problems is a roadway design that's typical of many other roadways, which is exactly why you would find that exact same crash type that happened on 400 East happen again now on 500 East with almost no traffic, because the conditions of the roadway look and they're very similar. So you're looking for what's the design characteristics that lead to these crashes that you have control over, because we don't have control over human behavior. What we have control over is how we design and build our roadways.
And certainly before Wells County takes any action as far as moving or changing things, because that's usually, whenever you're making a change, you're gonna have to provide a pretty exhaustive reason as to why it's always been fine before. I think Jerry's brought up a good point. We can't control human behavior. If I could, the sheriff wouldn't have anybody in jail because he could fix that. So the best we can do is mitigation measures and try to identify why we're making the changes that we are. I'll give just a loose example. If we're going to ask to remove trees from the public right-of-way of the clear zone, I'm going to have to explain it to a property owner why we want to cut down an old oak tree that's 3 feet off the edge of the road. Well, because that's a potential fatality. I don't need to wait for a little white cross to get out there in front of that tree to know that that's a hazard based on the information that we have. And I think it's well within our jurisdiction to look at making those sort of improvements if that's what we're identifying as an improvement. It's a safety measure. You don't run with scissors, you know. No.
Do we do this in a short-term, long-term, mid-term? So let's say State Road 1 is approved at some point. That doesn't help us on hazard between now and, I don't even know if I'll be alive if State Road 1 happens, right? It's that far off. So like Teely Road, 450, Norwell Road, we have kids going up and down those all the time. You know, I don't want to wait till we have 12 fatalities. What are we doing on those main roads that go to, that are an artery that are either our schools or our cities to make those changes now?
Correct. And so this is one of the steps that we're certainly taking. This is probably the first one. The next step is going to be looking at our county highway design standards so we can try to adopt them so that we, one, set a bar, this is what we're going to meet, the minimum that we want to see. And then as we do projects, it's just going to be incremental. You know, essentially you're eating the elephant one piece at a time. We're not going to, same way with our bridge asset management plan, this becomes part of how we do our road asset management plan. And we're gonna have to address this whether State Road 1 happens or not, because you're still gonna have these safety measures that are out there. Someone's still gonna refuse to drive on State Road 1, and as Wells County grows, the frequency is going to only increase. And so the expectation is that we're gonna have to be prepared to respond. And so this is looking at it, and certainly it's not static. We're gonna look at the behavior, the crash types that happen. We'll work with the sheriff's office to make sure that the area's data that's put in is accurate. That allows you to get the best picture of what's going on. And then what I'll do is, as your county highway engineer, we'll identify projects together and say which ones you want to do with the money you have. We can't fix everything, absolutely not. And so we're going to have to identify the projects that you want to do with the money you have, and we'll incrementally make these sort of improvements. But we got to look in the mirror now and then to say what we want to do.
And to answer, the other follow-up would be roadway safety audits, and our other analyses that we've been doing prior to this plan is looking at where are your the hot spots. And once we've identified those, we usually coordinate with Nate. That would lend itself to a roadway safety audit where you can find out what exactly is going on with this specific location and how can we address it, and then would it be eligible for federal aid funding, or is it something you would want to do locally? So there's really a three-pronged process. This plan is more systemic, looking at the entire system to find out what is the primary issue in your area. Not necessarily the only issue, just the primaries.
Yeah, because federal aid is restricted to certain road sections anyway. It's very restricted. There's probably maybe 15% of the county roads would even qualify for federal aid. The bridges all do, but the road sections, only certain classifications of roads would even be eligible for those funds. So we have to look at other measures on a lot of the roads that you're seeing in this plan. So, I want to go through that and at least review this plan with you. If it's something that we're ready to adopt, I think there's some action item adjustments, there's some wording in a couple of these we got to fix. But other than that, I'd like to try to adopt this, make this kind of a regular process for us to do a review, and then we can look at doing design and road standards as we move forward.
You want to revise it first to get the
Yep,
wording
we'll
right?
do that and then bring it back to you, and I'll just ask for your approval to adopt this.
Perfect. Great.
Appreciate it. Jerry, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Just a pretty face.
Appreciate it, guys.
I don't know if you want
Thank
all
you.
that closed.
Yep. I'll just, close that, that's fine. So with that, we have also a draft copy I'd given you earlier of the county highway design standards. I've had conversations, and Derek Frederickson from Engineering Resources had worked with the county in development of this draft. I was going to ask if you wanted to put that on the website, but I know there was some comments already just in the time that you've had a chance to review this. So with that, what I'd like to do is probably when we do the meeting on 300 South, kind of get your input, feedback on that draft document, then I can give that back to Derek, and then once that's been edited, I'd like to post that to the website and get whatever public feedback we can as far as those design standards, because that standards document actually came out of the conversations in development of the local road safety plan that you saw here today. So we'll just hold on that one. Utility permits, Citizens Telephone had submitted a permit for relocation of that line on 8 South. During the Drainage Board, they'd already gotten a permit previously, so if you're fine with it, I'll just notify them that a permit's not needed for that. I was going to ask to do that, but I don't think that one would have to be required for that. And then the last item I've got is any right-of-way dedications that we have.
We've got about 4 or 5.
Got 4 or 5, so just recommending approval on those
Motion to
right-of-ways.
approve the right-of-ways.
Second.
All in favor, aye? Aye. 3-0.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Sorry it's a long kind of review, but that's a big document. That's probably been well over a year's worth of work and data to go through, so.
Helpful
appreciate it.
information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan?
I need a suitcase here to get all this stuff around. Yeah,
Richard, are you coming up here?
You come up, Dave? No, okay, all right.
And Lisa, I did get revisions on the number of employees, so, you guys, in the first, I'd already had these made up, and then we had found out that, Lisa told me we had too many employees listed. And so when I adjusted that, it lowered the premium on a couple of the items, and I had to write them in, so I'm
That's fine.
sorry. Typically, I would have had that in proposal format. So again, the first page here is a premium comparison. It outlines the specific coverage areas. You'll see where the multi-liability is where we're seeing the most increase. I think we've talked about this in the past, where there's a couple claims, couple pending claims. The designated wrongful employment. Most of this stuff, we're going to see 3 to 5% regardless in the market we're in. The cyber liability, as you see down below, is a extremely hot topic, where you're going to see that almost doubled in rate. So, but, and also, they're going to want to have multi-factor authentication, some sort of a plan in place going forward. I couldn't get any other quotes on the market without having that multi-factor in place. So that's something that we'll want to work on implementing, and that's not uncommon for any entity of this nature. Commercial auto, there have been some claims, and there's going to be the whole list of claims at the back packet. It's going to explain everything in detail. I think I even broke down certain percentages as far as loss ratio and everything else here. Do you want to go through every single page, or?
No, on those claims that you sent us, the ones that were highlighted in yellow, are those all active claims, or?
So what I wanted to do, are you talking about where I put the 9 civil rights?
Yeah, are those under
The
review?
only thing I wanted to, it's not because I was concerned about that or anything. I gave you an option under the civil rights for a different deductible, and I wanted you to know how many of those have been taken place since 16. So if, for example, if you were to go from a $2,500 deductible to a $5,000 per occurrence, I wanted you to see how many of those you've had since 2016. Because I did give you deductible options lowering the rate if we went with a higher deductible.
My question though is, anybody can make a claim. Of those that you highlighted, how many were actual claims to the insurance where we actually paid something out?
I mean, with all those claims, I don't have the claims studied. I mean, the big ones were the 2 suicides were the big ones. But let's see here. It'll list on there whether it's open or not, Jeff.
Yeah.
Let's
So
see here.
what was paid?
Yeah, it'll say on there if it's open, closed, and I can get all that information for you. I also, Mike also wants to have it broken down by department, if we can do that, so if there are, the claims issues where we need to address certain items as well. But let's see here. So as you can see, I mean, it talks about other deductible options down at the bottom here. And then I gave a breakdown of every area. I explained why there was some rate increase. I explained, for example, multi-class liability, if you turn through there. The 2021 multi-class liability policy had a 121% loss ratio. And that doesn't even have all the claims paid out yet. So, like I said, that's at 121%. Now, this last year, there were none as new, but the last suicide is one that's being opened, and we don't know what's going to happen or take place there. So we have no idea what will be paid out there. So, but my understanding is, and that stuff's going to happen, you can't prevent, I mean, it's hard to prevent anything from, I mean, we can look at certain things, or we can look at the auto claims, and we can see where there's issues, or or neglect or just not doing your job. I mean, we can prevent some of that stuff and work on that. Some of these other items, I mean, it's accidents happen, and it's hard to prevent, all of this stuff from taking place. But like I gave a description of why and the specifics as far as the multi-class, the designated wrongful employment. And like I said, we had 166 full-time. Lisa told me that it went to 133, so that changed that rate up a little bit. And if you go to page 2 of 8 for the Bliss McKnight section, that's where it actually breaks down your actual multi-liability coverage, and then it splits out the E&O coverage, civil rights coverage with deductible limits. And then 2 and 3 is a designated employment practices liability and employee benefit. It's a bunch of stuff to go over if we want to talk about this all like in an open forum, but I don't know if anybody has specific questions on any of those specific liability items, or the property, you're going to see a little bit of an increase because of the property values and cost to rebuild and everything is always, at this time, homeowners, all kinds of the commercial property. I don't know if anybody really has a rebuild of what things are going to cost with everything that's taking place anymore. Cost of materials, contracting costs. I mean, what is it? Is it $300,000 to rebuild a home, or is it $380,000? We don't even, in our industry, it's hard to even know anymore. So we have to make sure that we have enough coverage on these buildings and structures as well. Let's see here. The cyber and the data. I just wanted to make sure that if you guys had any questions on that at all, because that did have quite a bit of an increase.
So if we get secondary authentication, that'll help on the cyber piece?
Yes, and it'll also, by having that in place, we could go to other markets also. But without having that multi-factor authentication, just people, they don't want the risk, because the claims are so high, and the number of claims and the amount that they pay on these claims tend to be extremely high. So, and again, I dealt with this on the city of Bluffton, where they tried to quote it out and they couldn't get any quotes because the other carrier couldn't get any quotes on that. We had it already in place, but it's going to get worse, guys. I mean, it's not going to get better. This cyber data is a extremely hot topic in our industry, and it is not going away.
Nope.
I mean, if you own a business, I mean, there are people trying to get into our emails. It's huge. So, I mean, that's something that I'm glad you guys have a policy in place for it. Is it expensive? It is. But I'm extremely glad that we were able to get this stuff in place a couple years ago instead of, trying to do it now. Bliss McKnight is the carrier that does your multi-liability, your auto. You've been with them for 18 years. So there's a relationship with them. That's how we were probably able to keep the premium from going up more. I've been told that if we can keep things in control, that we can probably get the rates back down the following year. You never know. I'm not going to hold them to that. I mean, I will remember that and bring it when we negotiate pricing. But I'm told that if we can continue to, because this last year was not that bad. The auto claims concern me a little bit, but the multi-class liability was not that bad this last year. So,
My question is, if we renew it, any pending claims will be under if we change deductibles, will the deductible automatically change?
Yeah. Well, most of I think they've all been turned in and documented, so I would think
So
that.
they're
yes.
already in the queue?
Yes, yes.
All right.
And, I mean, that's why I noted how many civil rights claims there's been, because if I were to change anything, that would maybe be one I'd consider, because I think it can save you, let's see here, and the other one was the employment practices liability. I don't think we've ever had anything in that area, ever. And, I mean, that can save, if you go to a $5,000 deductible, that can save another, almost $1,200. You've never had a claim on that ever. So, I'm not saying you don't need the coverage, I'm just saying, if you're not seeing any kind, never even anything turned in, I would say that might be areas I'd hit as far as maybe bumping, to save an extra $1,200 here or so. You go 3 or 4 years and you don't have one of those, you basically pay for the difference in deductible anyway.
Right.
So if it were me, I would bump that wrongful employment liability to a $5,000 deductible, and it would save $1,190 some bucks. It's not a lot, but I mean, every little bit counts. The civil rights is significant. If you go from a $2,500 to a $5,000 deductible, that'll save you $4,917. But instead of having a $2,500 deductible per claim, you would have a $5,000. So that's why I noted there had been 9 since 2016. Because, I mean, that's what I would ask. If somebody was saying, hey, we can bump your deductible, I'm gonna say, well, how many instances have we had? And that wasn't to tell you that, oh, that's terrible that you have that many. I wanted to tell you, to educate you on if you did change the deductible. That's what we were looking at. So, that would be the other one I would really consider, is possibly going to a $5,000 deductible on the civil rights. And if you made those changes, I think that your increase would, I don't think it would be very bad at all, considering, the auto claims, and the auto stayed relatively not bad. I didn't think the auto was all that bad for, what we'd experienced. So I don't know if you want me to go over any other areas that you want.
I've got what I need.
Like I said, there hasn't been any major changes from before. The property is with Selective Insurance, and the other part of it, and remember, your work comp renewed in February.
Yeah.
And I had also sought out to one of my other companies that does the city, and they wanted to wait until a year to quote it, until we find out, like on some of these, the suicide to jail. They wanted to wait and see what the claims were this last year, and then they would entertain quoting it as well. But they also quoted the work comp in February too, and we're a little high, so you never know what you're going to get. So let's see.
I would recommend the $5,000 deductible on the wrongful and the civil rights. That would be my take. Do you have any thoughts?
I have no objections to that.
I don't either. It's been over a course of many years, so. I do like the idea of getting this by department, so we can address issues if it's one department over the other.
There are some auto claims that I think we should probably have a little bit of a discussion. I just think
I
there's
agree.
some negligence.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon industry, I mean, it happens, where you just have to, every once in a while, say, hey, look, this stuff, I mean, here's one, here's another one, we just need to really make sure checks and balances. I don't think that'd be bad.
Yeah, give us that breakdown and we'll analyze it.
I'd make a motion to accept this as he has, with the exception of changing the deductible to $5,000 in the wrongful employment and the civil rights coverage.
Seconded.
All in favor, aye.
Okay.
Aye.
So,
Yeah, and please provide that to us. That'd be great by department.
okay, so we're gonna, just to verify, we're gonna go with $5,000 on the wrongful, the deductible on the wrongful employment, and $5,000 deductible on the civil rights.
That's correct.
Okay. And I think the only thing I need here is I need Mike to sign a statement of values on the property, and we should be all set. And you guys, you are billed quarterly, so you want to keep everything the same, I assume.
I don't see any
That's up to her.
change.
Is that right?
Unless you do.
The cyber will be annual, so we'll have annual payment on that, but everything else in the past, you've done quarterly.
Yeah, that's fine.
But we did install the multi-factor authentication and everything else around the permit.
Mike and,
And we'll be able to, like, you're gonna have IT people to actually, I mean, they're not gonna come in and do it for you, but they'll walk you through and tell you, reasonably of what's to be expected. And I think all in all, that's just going to benefit you guys in the long run anyway, because you do not want people getting in. And it's a nightmare. I mean, I've had clients that have had this business and everything. And places like, the municipality business, it's a huge target for them.
Yeah.
So we don't want to think that it's not a big deal. All right, I appreciate it, and thank you guys for everything you're doing. I mean, I really enjoy watching, seeing some change, and I think it's really, really good that you guys are on top of a lot of things, and it's neat to see this and the growth in Bluffton. I'm pretty excited. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
How do we get that second authentication on Roger's list of to-dos?
That's just a statement of value on the property.
Y'all need to talk to him.
Right here.
Yeah.
I have a note in my minutes, my notes.
Thank you, sir.
Everybody just find out.
Right, Austin, interlocal?
Sure.
Something to cover there?
I can introduce. There's an arrangement between the town of Ossian and Logan Properties LLC to develop a 30,000 square feet expandable to 50,000 square feet facility up there. Construction cost is $2,800,000. Ossian had agreed to cover interest carrying costs for that whatever loan that Logan was able to receive. We had, the commissioners had at some point a few months ago agreed to assist in those carrying costs and covering that, assist Ossian specifically with that, up to at 60%. Basically, LPL was, which is Logan Properties, LPL was to get a loan, Ossian was going to cover the interest, and Wells County would cover 60% of that cost to as a reimbursement. I do have an interlocal agreement drafted here. I talked to Mike Hartberg, who's the town attorney for Ossian, and I know Chad Klein and Mike have been very active in trying to get this moving. They were very, expeditious in getting this going early on. I talked to Mike, and I believe they were still trying to get, there may be some financing issues on Logan's part, there may be they're tracking down some exhibits. I'm not quite sure all that is going on. I know that the professionals are trying to push it forward, but I don't have any contact with LPL, so I can't tell you what's going on. But that being said, the county had agreed to this, and it's in our minutes, so I did draft an interlocal agreement. However, I hesitate to sign anything because I'm not quite sure what the arrangement is on the other side. If the town of Ossian is going to change their arrangement, there has been significant delay here. I would say it's been at least a few months, maybe up to 90 days. And so...
Actually, we started the conversation, I believe, in November.
Right.
So
back before I was even...
I hate to have a 3-year contract for now, when it really would be a 2.5-year contract. You know what I'm talking about. So.
I think I responded with, let's put a timeline to it. I mean, it's kind of reminds me of our thing with Adams County, that if they want to take this serious, let's move along. It's in their ball court. You know, if they're not ready to move it, then give them 30 days to respond, and after that, we dissolve it.
Sounds good, I'll do that.
That's fair.
I think so.
Peterborough Board?
Sure. So ongoing issues with the Peterborough have been in the forefront. I sent a letter out to Larry McChesney, who's one of the commissioner appointees on the board. That we have two. One's Chandler Gerber, who's here, about potential issues with his continued appointment. The commissioners had passed an ordinance allowing for the removal of board members for no cause. They could remove for cause, but they don't need cause. subject to 7-day notice of a hearing, and this is the hearing, this is where it would be, where the commissioners actually act in a, what we would call a quasi-judicial fashion. On April 7th, I mailed out a certified letter to Mr. McChesney indicating him that today, April 18th, would be a day that we would consider his continued appointment and potential action for removal. I indicated that he had the right to attend the meeting and he could make any comment. I also indicated to him that if he had counsel or wished to contact me, he was free to do so. He's never contacted me. As far as I know, there's been no attorney that's gotten involved, and I don't believe he's here today. I also told him to let me know in writing, either to my office or to the Wells County Auditor, what his intentions were moving forward, if he even wanted to remain on, if he wanted to perhaps enlighten us onto why he should stay on. I know that there's a meeting coming up in May. This would create a vacancy on the board that would have to be filled, but my understanding from the auditor is that there have been a fair amount of people who have been asking about being appointed. There's a statutory framework that we have to follow. I can't say whether or not the individuals who have applied would be good replacements or not. I just don't know. That being said, the first step would be to, for you commissioners, if you wanted to remove him from the boards, to make that decision and make that in the minutes. As far as cause or no cause, I believe everybody saw the, Steve Huggins is here, was the council meeting. He had appeared and made some statements that was all recorded on The Voice and broadcast. In addition to that, Chandler Gerber is here, who is on the Peterborough and has indicated to me some concerns moving forward, is being able to work together, being able to handle property tax appeals as they should be. So that's my intro. I'll leave it up to the commissioners then to take it from there and either make a motion or perhaps hear from any of the individuals who are here today about their thoughts on the matter and inform you as to perhaps what you should be doing here.
Does anybody here have comments on that?
And I will say, he received the letter, he signed for it per the U.S. Postal Service on April 9th, so it was greater than 7 days, he has noticed.
My feeling is we should remove him and take applications or review applications for someone to fill that vacancy.
I agree with that, with him not appearing today and not responding, and after the appearance at the county council, I'll agree with that. I'll make the motion to remove Larry from Peterborough and,
Accept applications and for,
well, we've already got applications, review applications,
As long as they're qualified,
qualifications.
yeah, meets the criteria, so I'll second that.
all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
3-0. Anything on monthly reports?
No, next on is the commissioner meeting times.
Okay.
So we reviewed this at the Drainage Committee today, and I proposed we move it to 5 PM. The commission meeting's 5 PM. The Drainage Board to 4, no, the
4:30.
4:30.
Pending Jared's approval, I don't see that as an issue.
And solid waste to 4.
Solid waste will be at 4, the third meeting of the month.
The third meeting, all right.
So keep the first meeting at 9 of the month and the second meeting at 5, or all at 5?
I say we just change them all, and if we don't like it, then we can talk about it, change it back at some point, but. So I make a motion to approve that change.
Effective when?
June,
Probably the second meeting of May, maybe the first meeting of June at the latest.
I'm good with that.
So,
Let's go with first meeting in June, just make it clean.
Effective meeting, okay.
first meeting in June. Do we have a second?
Is that a motion?
Yes.
A motion. Oh, yeah, I'll second it.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
3-0.
Aye. 3. 6th.
You said June 6th.
Yeah.
Anything under miscellaneous?
Oh, we have some ordinances.
Okay, so handbook ordinance.
Yes.
Okay.
Quite a few.
Okay, I have quite a few here. The first is, well, the handbook ordinance is already, is separately put out, but we have employee handbooks as a county, and we had a very restrictive, I should say, policy with regard to disclosure of public, of information, employee records to people out in the public who may request them. There's a statute on this that has changed over the years. We are changing this handbook to allow for whoever it is that's getting the request. It usually goes through the auditor. It could be the department head themselves. To allow for disclosure of the name, compensation, job title, address, contact information, previous work experience, and dates of employment, information relating to the status of any formal charges, and the factual basis for any disciplinary actions. It's in the statute. We have to have that in there. We can't make it more restrictive, and so we just changed the employee handbook to conform to the statute
Yeah,
to make
just
sure that.
mirror it.
Yes,
Yeah.
so.
I'll make a motion to accept that.
Second.
All in favor, aye? 3-0.
One more ordinance, we have the ARPA funds, this is the America Rescue Plan, and certain funds were expended, or that, there's money that's out there, it came through the America Rescue Plan, and when Lisa enters in the expenses and how they're termed, that can affect the reporting requirements and also some of the financial ends. It's very complicated. We've been in contact with Barnes and Thornburg about it. Per Barnes and Thornburg and per Treasury regulations, all this ordinance will do is to style all of the expenditures made under our America Rescue Plan ordinance, which was passed back in September of last year, to consider them, quote, revenue loss expenditures, even when businesses or counties or whatever do not experience revenue loss. They're still telling us to put, it still falls under this revenue loss category, and it'll lighten the load for Lisa and allow us to have clear reporting with the federal government to make sure that everything is coded properly and there aren't any hiccups in terms of receiving those funding or receiving that funding or and avoiding potential heavy audits later on.
I'll make a motion to accept that.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
3-0.
That's 2022-08. The handbook ordinance was 2022-07.
Okay, thank you. Meade had also asked for 3 stop signs to be placed on the corner of 400 West and 1000 North. There is 400 is a dirt road. There's a yield sign there. He thought that there was some danger there, and also he told me that he was in Murray, and looking around, there were some intersections there that did not have stop signs up that should have had stop sign at the corner of Main and Market and Murray, and at the corner of Garhard, which is also 350 North, I believe. Is that
extended.
It's called Garhard?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'd go with 350 North, but if that's what they want to call it, it's fine. So,
I don't know where that's at.
anyway, I have 3 stop sign ordinances that I asked to be passed.
Motion to accept.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
3-0.
And that would be ordinances 09, 10, and 11.
Okay, thank you.
I always wondered about that 1000 North 400, seeing a yield sign. I think you don't see them very often in the county.
Right.
That's all I had, yeah.
Anything from you folks? Chuck, please.
Just some clarification on Peterborough. I'm under the impression that one of the board members has to be a level 2 or level 3 assessor
Your council appointment
to
is.
be active and for the board to be functionable.
Right,
Was
currently,
Chesney a level 2 or level 3?
no, currently the council appointee
Council
is.
appointee is.
Right.
But if someone, or if something was to happen to that appointee, where she resigned or was replaced, the board would not meet.
I may have an answer to this. I believe that there are circumstances where the commission and the council can waive any and all requirements. According to the Peterborough Best Practices PDF that Harry Wood puts out. So there are contingencies for those kinds of things.
I think we have one applicant that has level 2, don't we?
I haven't seen him yet.
I haven't seen him yet either.
I believe, yes, I've heard that too. I believe so.
I've heard that, but I haven't seen the name or qualifications, so. Is that adequate, Chuck?
For clarification, I think there's also a requirement that 2 of the 3, or 1 of each, have to be residents of the county, but then that can be waived too if the county were unable to find somebody. So it's very much a home rule, it's under home rule guidance.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Second one is.
Just wanted to introduce myself and
Thank you.
Now we got a face.
Yes, I'm Dan Watson. I work for the engineering firm, Dean Longest and Knapp out of Castleton, Indiana. We've been in business for over 75 years. We're one of the oldest engineering firms in the state. And we are a full-service engineering firm. We do roads, bridges, right-of-way, environmental engineering, all that kind of thing. Like I said, we've been in business for over 75 years, so our longevity speaks for itself. We currently are working in J. Adams, Steuben, Allen County, Grant County, and would like to have the opportunity to work with Nate here in Wells County. A little bit about myself. I am from J County and work from J County. I was just recently retired as county engineer down there at the end of 2020 after 32 years, and went to work with Dean Longson. That's January of last year. So I'm local, and very familiar with county government, having served as county engineer for 32 years. I also served as mayor of Dunkirk for 4 years, and I'm on the city council for the Board of Works in Dunkirk. So just wanted to introduce myself and our services, and we will, hopefully submit some proposals and for consideration to work with you folks. I know I've met Michael, I think, last year.
Yes.
I hadn't met you much there.
Yep. I've had a name, but now I have a face.
All right.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Dan.
Good morning, Commissioners. I have a question and a comment on the NIRCC that we heard about today. Does that data have anything to do with people driving impaired and running off the roads? Like, do they account for that as far as these accidents that are in the county? Does that data include drunk driving under the influence, breaking other traffic laws, whatever? I just was curious if that was in there.
Yeah, the contributing factors are put in
So
there.
I think that'd be something different. And then if we adopt that, I don't remember who said it, but somebody said it up there that, they look for future hazards, like cutting down trees 3 feet off the road, because maybe there wasn't an accident there yet, but, there could be in the future. If you adopt that, does that give people some kind of government department or some department head more power to go into people's properties and do what they think's best for safety? or is it, how's that work? Would that have to be done through the commissioner's office if they wanted to go in somebody's property and cut down a tree that, you know, is 3 feet off the road, even if there hasn't been an accident or whatever? So I guess that was a little concerning on what that could do if that's adopted. And I just had a question about it.
I can answer that if you want.
Please.
Yeah. No, so I guess I'll answer the second question first. Certainly, when it comes to any of the permanent hazards, we talk about trees in the clear zone, the county and the county highway department, we wouldn't be able to just go onto private property and just start to mess with people's private property rights. When we're talking about these areas and we're talking about the right-of-way, we're talking about existing easements or existing right-of-ways. So if the county, if there were obstructions that were beyond what was the exact existing county right-of-way, then the county would have to take action to look at improvements, whether, and one of the items is donation of right-of-way. So if you've got trees that are in the area close that are on your private property and you want to have them removed to limit yourself from liability, let's say there's a lane departure and there's someone who leaves the road and they're out of the public right-of-way, but they end up crashing onto your private property, there's liability that essentially now comes onto you and your farm that the county wouldn't be able, now they would be a party in that. And so what we'd be looking at doing is where there's obstructions in the existing right-of-way adjacent to the road, we'd be looking to do removals of those. So certainly nothing that would be in that would supersede private property rights. It wouldn't give the county new rights to try to do encroachments into those areas. It's going to identify risks that where the county has jurisdiction and would have responsibility, we would start to target those as far as activities that the county would already have.
But to answer more succinctly, this would not create any more power structure, this is not
No.
creating more authority for anyone else, this doesn't open up another can of worms in
No.
that regard.
No, absolutely not. So, no, this is simply a target for us to try to identify work that we should be doing within our jurisdiction today. It's activities that the county highway departments would have, and it would fall under the umbrella of what the county highway department would be responsible for. So this doesn't create any new rights, responsibilities, or encroachments of anybody's private property rights.
So right now, you can go on a right-of-way and cut a tree down?
Yep.
To the way.
Yep, and usually we'll get a call from a property owner quite upset as to why we cut the tree down, and sometimes we've negotiated with property owners because it's in an easement and because there's no standard document that says that we should. It usually has to be a judgment call on those, but if we can standardize that, then it gives us a little more guidance as far as how we are to address those risks. So.
I remember when I was a kid, on 124 East, 3 big trees, and I always asked Dad, they're awful close to the road, and he said, sometimes somebody will get killed there and they'll take them down.
Yeah.
And guess what? Somebody got killed there and they took them down, so.
And so we don't necessarily want to be reactionary to that when we have the opportunity to do it.
And we have a process of notification for that.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it just doesn't happen. There's
Right.
Okay. So
steps and.
there's steps, especially if it's a situation where there's obstruction outside of our permanent right-of-way or the right-of-way that already is established, then we'll have to try to acquire right-of-ways and we'll reach out, and it'd be something that would come from my office and the attorney's office to request that, and certainly any request for right-of-way come before you. You see them regularly. Just today you had 4 or 5 of them for right-of-way dedications, so.
It is odd that we cut trees down, then we put phone poles in the same right-of-way.
Yep.
Between mailboxes and phone poles in my neighborhood, it's been quite eventful this year, but.
Well, exactly, and certainly what we do when we're doing utilities, we try to set the utilities in the back 5 feet of right-of-way, and so when we're asking for right-of-way, we're asking for more, and we get a lot of pushback as to why do you need all that right-of-way? I don't want to put the poles back there. There are permanent obstructions. Thankfully, when it comes to telephone poles and utility poles, they only have a certain foundation, they're only so deep, and the telephone pole doesn't get bigger each year. So they are kind of only a certain size. So certainly we want to try to keep the obstructions as far back as we can, but certainly there's limitations on what government authority has in that. So we got to work within the right-of-way we have.
How about the other question, do you have any idea if this has impaired driving and all that in this?
The crashes will be the crashes. I don't think that they go through specifically and break down if there are the impairments that are happening with that. distracted drivers. And certainly it's something that's within that. If we want to try to identify the impairment, we can certainly look at trying to add that in there. Certainly, we're looking at demographics as well, as far as age striations within the sort of crashes, because there's always the accusation that it's young drivers that are doing it, or the other case, it's the old drivers doing it. So that becomes kind of an argument.
Could we see what kind of criteria they used for that?
I can certainly ask him that and see how you put that together.
Fine tune it.
Sure, absolutely.
I like it, because again, on 100, two of those were impaired, well, somebody on their cell phone.
Yep.
Distracted, yeah.
So would you fix a roadway because somebody's playing on their phone, or I like that idea to have that data in there.
Sure,
to understand.
we can certainly do that, yeah.
Does that answer your questions, Matt?
Yeah, thank you guys.
Absolutely. Anything else? Lisa? Nope. All right, I'll accept the motion to adjourn. So,
Seconded.
Phil Wright?
Aye.
3-0.
Thank you.